Welcome to Defense Talks Matters. Today's update is important for both our regional and international viewers because it connects three things that are happening at the same time. A new Pakistani naval missile test in the Arabian Sea, fresh, aggressive statements from India about taking Sindh, and the same Indian system still struggling to explain what went wrong in May's air conflict, and even in something as basic as an airshow display with Tejas. Let's start from the sea. Pakistan has issued a new NOTAM over the Arabian Sea for 25-26 November, covering a corridor of roughly 400 kilometers, starting off the Gwadar-Karachi axis and stretching outward. Whenever Pakistan marks such a restricted zone over water with that kind of length and orientation, it almost always means one thing: a live missile test, very likely from the Navy. Now, people on social media immediately jump to hypersonic missile, but if you look at the range window, that's very unlikely. Hypersonic boost glide systems or scramjet cruise missiles are typically tested over much longer corridors. A 400-kilometer box parallel to our coastline is far more consistent with a test of a sea-skimming anti-ship or coastal defense weapon, something like the Smash family or a navalized land attack anti-ship system. We've already seen Pakistan Navy test Smash from Zulfikar-class frigates in the past, and there have been consistent hints that a coastal battery configuration is also under work. Firing such a missile from near the coast out into the Arabian Sea using an instrumented target fits exactly with this kind of NOTAM. Why does this matter strategically? Because after May 2025, the message from Pakistan has become very clear. Any future conflict will not be fought only on land. The Indian Navy will be under real threat close to our coast. A credible anti-ship and coastal defense network means Indian carrier groups and large surface combatants cannot park comfortably near Karachi or Gwadar and think they are safe. A 400-kilometer standoff bubble with supersonic sea skimmers, backed by drones and long-range rockets, turns the northern Arabian Sea into a contested zone, not an Indian playground. At the same time, the pattern of NOTAMs also tells you something about doctrine. Some tests are announced loudly with full media coverage. Others happen quietly, with only a legal safety notice. That usually means capability validation, tactics, refinement, or upgrades that Pakistan does not want to over-publicize. For a Navy that is still relatively small in hull numbers, investing in long-range anti-ship and coastal missiles is the only logical way to build an asymmetric sea denial layer against a larger Indian fleet. Now, let's shift from the sea to the rhetoric coming out of New Delhi. In the last few days, India's defense minister has given a speech where he openly said,
आज सिंध की भूमि मेरे बहनों भाइयों यह भारत का हिस्सा भले ही न हो लेकिन सभ्यतागत रूप से सिंध हमेशा भारत का हिस्सा रहेगा और जहां तक जमीन की बात है तो बॉर्डर्स तो बदल सकते हैं क्या पता कल को सिंध भारत में फिर से वापस आ जाए.
I'm paraphrasing in English, that today Sindh may be part of Pakistan, but borders can change. And one day, Sindh could return to India. This isn't some random TV panelist. This is the sitting defense minister of a nuclear-armed state talking about a future where an entire Pakistani province is taken over. At the same time, a senior Indian general recently stated that Pakistan will not accept defeat until it faces territorial losses, and that the Indian army is working towards a doctrine where Pakistani land must be captured to impose a decisive outcome. For our international viewers, Sindh is not some disputed patch of ground. Under international law, Sindh is an integral, internationally recognized part of Pakistan. Any attempt to capture it militarily is not a limited operation. It is a full-scale invasion of a nuclear-armed country. This is exactly the kind of scenario where nuclear thresholds become relevant, not theoretical. So why is this language being used now? To understand that, we have to briefly go back to May 2025. Before that conflict, the Indian narrative internally was very simple. We will launch Operation Sindoor. We will carry out precision strikes. Pakistan will be unable to respond symmetrically, and we will walk away with a clean, TV-friendly victory. That was the political and media buildup. What actually happened was very different. India did inflict damage on Pakistan through standoff strikes and drones. But Pakistan not only absorbed that damage, it responded with its own offensive. Air operations, long-range rockets, and standoff weapons that hit high-value Indian targets. Multiple Indian aircraft were lost, including premium platforms. Key air defense nodes like S-400 radars took hits. International analysis, including from the US side, later described Pakistan as having successfully imposed significant military costs and having demonstrated the effectiveness of its Chinese origin weapons under combat. Conditions. At this point in the video, if you find our analysis informative and want DTM to continue daily updates with accuracy and clarity, do consider subscribing. It genuinely helps the channel grow and reach more viewers. Coming back to the regional picture. So India did not get the clear, one-sided victory it had promised its own population. At best, it ended in a costly stalemate with the uncomfortable detail that the bigger side lost more hardware. When you've told 1.4 billion people that Pakistan is 5 days' work, but your own Air Force loses jets and your S-400 gets hit, you have a political problem. How do you repair that image? One way is what we are seeing now. Talk more loudly about the next war. Promise that this time you will capture territory. That this time you will teach Pakistan a permanent lesson. Combine that with ground exercises like Ram Prahar, where BMP 2 seconds and tanks practice canal crossings as if they are going to drive into Pakistani Punjab or Sindh like it's still 1965. The problem is that the battlefield has changed. The rhetoric has not. In 1965 or 1971, an armored brigade could mass near a canal, build a pontoon bridge, and push armor across while artillery fired smoke and HE. Today, a single swarm of FPV drones, a couple of Fatah series long-range rockets with cluster warheads, and a coastal or land-based anti-tank missile battery can turn that entire crossing into a scrapyard in minutes. That's before we even talk about PAF's standoff weapons, PGMs, and the long-range SAM coverage of Pakistan's integrated air defense. This is exactly why Pakistan has been investing in systems like Fatah 2, Fatah 4, the new rocket force, and naval missiles like SMASH to make any large mechanized thrust across canals, deserts, or coastlines extremely costly, if not suicidal. And while this very serious reality exists on the ground, Indian public messaging often moves in the opposite direction, away from realism and into fantasy. A perfect example of this disconnect is what we have just seen with the Tejas crash at Dubai. On 21 November, during an aerobatic display, an IAF Tejas went down in front of the world. The pilot lost his life, and again, we offer full condolences, because a pilot's death is a tragedy, regardless of flag. For professional reasons, we analyzed the early footage in detail in a separate video. Energy loss during a vertical maneuver, late pull-up, possible combination of pilot misjudgment and performance margin issues. What has been the reaction in parts of the Indian media ecosystem? Instead of quietly waiting for a technical investigation, some voices, including well-known anchors, have already started blaming the American GE 404 engine, blaming US policy, even connecting it to tariffs and to what President Trump said about 7 Indian jets being shot down in the Pakistan conflict. In other words, if something goes wrong, it must be someone else's fault. Either Pakistan, or China, or now, America. We've seen the same pattern after May 2025, when international reports or satellite imagery don't match the Indian narrative of decisive victory. Those reports are attacked as biased or Western, or anti-India, rather than being treated as a reality check. Why does this matter for our main topic, the talk of taking Sindh and crossing into Pakistan? Because if a system struggles to honestly assess why one fighter crashed in a controlled airshow environment, how is that same system going to honestly assess the cost of a full-scale invasion against a nuclear-armed neighbor with layered air defense, long-range rockets, cruise missiles, and armed drones? If your instinct is always to blame an external factor, America, the engine supplier, some conspiracy, instead of looking in the mirror at training, doctrine, maintenance culture, and political decision-making, then you are more likely to miscalculate in war. And miscalculation between two nuclear-armed countries is not a joke. From Pakistan's side, the position has been consistent. We do not seek conflict. We gain nothing from another round of escalation. But if a conflict is imposed, whether through a limited strike or deeper thrust, the response will not be symbolic. It will be larger, more punishing, and designed to impose costs that no Indian government can sell as victory to its own population. That is why you are seeing, on our side, a mix of calm political messaging and very active military preparation. Naval missile, NOTAMs in the Arabian Sea, major joint exercises like Rad ul-Fatah, rocket force drills, and continuous integration of drones and loitering munitions into ground formations. The purpose is not adventurism. The purpose is deterrence. The takeaway is this. On one side, you have an Indian leadership that, for domestic political reasons, is talking about capturing Sindh and teaching Pakistan a decisive lesson, even as its own forces are still processing the reality of May 2025 in a public Tejas crash. On the other side, you have a Pakistani state signaling through actions rather than slogans that any future attempt at territorial grab, whether in Sindh, Punjab, or along the coast, will be met with multi-domain retaliation from land, from air, and increasingly from the sea. Both the Pakistani naval test and the Indian political statements are still developing stories. We don't yet know exactly which missile will be fired under this new NOTAM. And India's internal debate about May's losses and the Tejas crash is only beginning. As more solid information comes out, we'll continue to update you always with a focus on facts, capabilities, and realistic consequences, not emotional slogans. Please subscribe to our channel for daily defense updates. See you guys in the next video.